Welcome back, and today we are talking about Lempicka, and I know this is coming very late. It's closing literally on Sunday. I saw this actually 1 month ago yesterday, but I just haven't gotten to it because this season's been crazy and life is crazy. But I'm here to review Lempicka and answer the question, is it as much of a mess as everyone says it is? Continue watching to find out. So if you don't know what Lempicka is about, well then you're out of luck because I'm not going to tell you. But it's basically a lesbian painter. And I would say that I was very excited to see this. I found out about the album, the EP that they put out. I was obsessed with it. I loved it. Amber Iman, I was obsessed with. So I was going in with very high expectations. Now, when I saw this, the reviews had come out, the discourse had come out, you know, over people criticizing it and then fans saying it's because they're homophobic. That whole thing I'm not going to get into, mainly because we've moved past it. But to summarize, the people that were doing the reviews, the critics, actually were very constructive, and I thought they were not homophobic at all. And a lot of the reviewers were women, so kind of destroys that logic, and it kind of goes into this culture that we're in right now of like identity politics and all that horrible stuff, cancel culture. You know, I don't like using the term wokeism, but wokeism, yeah. I'm gonna start off with the performances, and then I'll get into the summary of the show and like my thoughts. I thought I did not see Eden Espinosa. I saw her understudy. I think, what was it? Marine Torres, I think I'm saying that maybe right. She was Lempicka, and then everyone else was the same. She was fantastic. I know Eden's been criticized for having pitch issues and all that stuff. I thought that the character of Lempicka is a beautiful character that I think could definitely be in the future an award-worthy performance. And I thought Marianne had a I'm just gonna say Marianne because I don't know how to say her name. I thought she had a very beautiful voice, very powerful. I was there on the infamous delay, if you saw on Instagram, when she went on last minute, and it was great because I was like 20 minutes late, and luckily they started like 30 minutes late. But she was amazing. Her voice was stunning. She got a standing ovation after one of the songs. And I want to see her in more musicals. Like, this is a up-and-coming talent that's going to take over the scene one day. It was breathtaking. She portrayed the character with all of the nuance and with all the charisma and talent. And again, the vocals of Lempicka is the spectacle of this production. And I think if the vocals don't work, the show doesn't work as much as it should. But when she went on and she sang, it was like, wow. It was like, wow. There was like, I think 2 moments when she messed up. Like, I think one of her costume pieces like fell off or something. But it looked like she was doing it for her whole life. Like, it didn't seem like a first performance at all. I thought Amber was spectacular. George, George, I don't know how to say his last name, who plays, Marionette. I'm really butchering these names. I felt like was the highlight for me. He was a very out there, kind of like over the top performance. You know, kind of a mustache twirling 80s villain, but it worked, and he was very charismatic. He was very you know, engaged in the story at all times. You know, there was no half doing anything. And the character itself was definitely very interesting in terms of, you know, him wanting to see something new, and then him getting seduced by the Nazis and then becoming one of them. And despite him being like what you could call a cardboard villain, he kind of isn't. He's just a bit of a jerk to people. But he, to me, stole the show, and his numbers were like my favorite. Beth Level and Andrew Semenowski, I think, were awesome as the husband and as the Baroness. I've never seen Beth Level live, so I was super excited to see her performance, who is not very large. There's not a lot of things for her to do, but when she's on the stage, it's awesome. And then I thought Natalie Joy Johnson, who portrays Susie, I thought was I liked her character a lot. I thought that she was a great comedic relief, and again, all these people are so charismatic, so in such a good like relationship with each other. But I felt like this character was a distraction that maybe we didn't need, and I'll get into that when I get into the plot of it, and my critiques of it. And then, that was kind of it for the cast. I thought that the score was brilliant. I think that it definitely, you know, it's not the most lyrically complex, and there definitely were moments when I kind of just, like, your mind could wander, but you were still, like, listening and enjoying the music, as opposed to, like, something like, I don't know, Here Lies Love or Days of Wine and Roses, where every single second I was like, oh, you know? But it's still a brilliant score. It should have gotten a Best Score nomination, because there are some bangers in here, and I know a lot of people criticize it because, you know, the costume changes, and it's so inconsistent, and every song sounds different. To me, I saw that, but it wasn't a detriment to me. I actually enjoyed that, and I actually, was not at all distracted by that. So this definitely is a very divisive musical. Some people are going to be distracted by it and hate it and say it's campy and it's messy. For me, I acknowledge the flaws, but I still think there's a lot of good and potential in here. And again, I think that a lot of the issues that people had in the reviews I saw, but like I didn't have an issue with, and it didn't deter me from enjoying what I was seeing. I thought the choreography was amazing. The choreographer, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Rafi Ja Kelly, I think. Rafa Feather Kelly. He did Strange Loop, I think, and White Girl in Danger. And his choreography is very unorthodox. It's very, like, non-traditional. But I love that kind of stuff. So I love the choreography. I'm, like, the only one that probably likes it. And I get why people don't like it, because it's very abstract and weird and, like, well, not robotic, but just kind of, like, you know. It's not traditional form or style, you know. And I can see why it turns off people in its weirdness, because it's hard to describe. Even you just gotta go and watch it, even though there's only like 3 performances left. I thought the set design and the lighting and the direction were all fantastic, as they are with any Rachel Chafkin show. I set up like in the front like 2 rows, and it was so overwhelming, because you were just like, whoa. And it's a pretty basic set, but they overwhelm me with the projections and with the lighting and with the you know, the energy of the performers. It's great. So I actually want to go into the show itself, because I liked Act 1 a lot. I didn't just like it, I loved it. I was like, Act 1 ended, and I was like, the critics are wrong. This show is amazing. It's gonna get a Best Musical nomination. Then I saw Act 2, and I was like, oh, I see, I get it. You have Unseen, Our Time, Starting Over, Paris. Those 4 songs are the introduction, where you basically get a lot of information at you in a very short amount of time. I know a lot of people criticized it for not delving into the beginnings of Lempicka's life. I was okay with that, but I definitely do think that, like, when they talk about the revolution and all that stuff, unless you know the history, you don't know why it's happening. It's not explored a lot, and it should be explored more and given more time to breathe, so you can really understand the stakes, and, like, you know, what's his face? Tuadius Lempicka, is his family in the right? Is his family in the wrong? Like, there's a lot of stuff, like, lyrics of, like, you stole this land and now it's ours. And I'm like, that's definitely something very interesting that could be explored, but they just don't go about doing it. So I definitely saw from the opening numbers that they definitely were, you know, definitely kind of going through things very quickly. And I can understand why for some people it would be frustrating and unsatisfying to want to get to know about these things and only getting like 3 minutes of it. The beginning is very, like, you know, epic score, but then in Paris it gets very, like, techno and everything. And so I can see why people kind of were jarred by the tone shift. Then we have Plain Design, Don't Bet Your Heart, I Will Paint Her, Perfection. And those are really the introduction to Raphael, Lempicka getting the inspiration. And I Will Paint Her got standing ovation. Amazing vocals. Great songs. But I feel like the middle of Act 1 is when it was the best, because it was the most simplest. It was Lempicka, struggling artist, needs a muse, finds a muse, has a little rivalry going on with Marinetti, and then is having this kind of sexual awakening. It was very simple, but it was effective, and like you were interested, you were invested. It was funny. It was entertaining. It was awesome. It was just like you watched it and you were like, wow, this is really good. This is good musical theater. And it took risks, it was very bold and ambitious, and it takes a lot of big swings. And I appreciate that. And I would rather see something that's like this, that is somewhat messy, than something that is safe, but like very structured and very like well organized and done well. Then you have Wake Up Mama, Look at Me, the most beautiful bracelet in woman is, and this is where you get into like the second half of the act one, and basically the husband gets a job, the daughter feels neglected, and then Rafaela and Lempicka have sex for the first time. Now, I definitely do think that the character of the daughter was very underwritten, and there's a weird moment when like Lempicka was like, oh, like we're sisters, to like her daughter, and it gave me kind of like sexual incest vibes between like a mother and a daughter. And I don't know what that was about. I don't know if that was just an acting choice, but it was weird. I don't think it was the intention. But I definitely do think that, like, this relationship between families and, when you're an artist and you have a family, how far are you willing to go for your art at the expense of people that are in your personal life? And does that make you a bad person? Does that make you a good person? How does the contradictions, all of that stuff is very intricate and beautiful and not really seen in most musicals. And it is kind of brushed over a lot. I also thought that, like, the husband not wanting to work, I know a lot of people criticize that, like, oh, like, that doesn't make any sense, and, like, why doesn't he just work? But I understood it. I got it. So then we get into Act 2, and this is where the issues for me start to arise, because we have Perry will always be Perry. Banger number, but it's in my opinion, it's in the wrong part of the show, because we have now like 5 plot lines. We have Lempicka and Raphael's relationship deteriorating, Lempicka's relationship with her family deteriorating. I can't say it. You have the rise of the Nazis. You have Natalie Joy Johnson's whole like club opening and then it getting attacked, and then you have like the story, the Baroness and everything. Like you have 5 plot lines, and if you know what Batman versus Superman is, that's kind of what this kind of turns into, an overcrowded mess. And to summarize it, basically, all of these plot lines deserve integrity and time and energy, and they kind of get glossed over with a song, and then you kind of move on, and you feel kind of dissatisfied and wanting more, and seeing the potential and being saddened that it doesn't get to that potential. Especially with Perry Will Always Be Perry, a very powerful number, where George Abdul's character does like this funny dance, but then at the end he does the same dance and it's not funny anymore, and it's very powerful and it's very moving. But then that plotline doesn't come back until like, I'd say Here It Comes and Speed. That's kind of where it comes back on. And then you have the New Woman, which is a song that the husband and Tamara sing, where they're both accepting of each other's like relationships or whatever. And again, I feel like that was a great number, but because we didn't have a lot of development with the husband, it just felt less impactful. And then you have the song Woman, which is when Susie opens up her club. It's very like Our Lady of the Underground centric. But I feel like this should have opened up Act 2 because it doesn't have any relevance. Well, it doesn't have any relevance to the plot, and it doesn't move the story forward. In fact, I think it halts it. And especially with the dramaticness of Perry Will Always Be Perry, and the rise of the Nazis and all this dramatic stuff that's happened in the beginning of Act 2, it just kind of feels like, wait, why are we here now? So I think, like, the Woman should have been at the top, and Perry Will Always Perry should have been, like, at the end of Act 2. Stay also has a weird place because, it goes from, like, Lempicka and her husband being mad at each other to then her being cool with Raphael, and then her and Raphael uncool, and it just, like, bobs and weaves from numbers, and, like, it just feels very cluttered, and, like, you're going from, like, one point to another point, but it's just, like, boom, 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 boom. It's very like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It kind of gets jarring. What she sees, Raphael, and here it comes, speed. So that's when, like, basically Lempicka and Raphael start having relationship problems, and then she ends up breaking up with her, and then the family leaves, and the Nazis start invading, and Natalie Joy Johnson's club gets, destroyed, and all of the dramatic moments happen, and, basically Lempicka is not able to make public her relationship with Raphael because we are in the 1900s when lesbian couples aren't supposed to be a thing. And again, all these are really intriguing things that just get glossed over so much that it's just like, I want to explore this. Like, you have the ability and you just kind of rush through it, and so it becomes very messy, and then a lot of people, I can understandably get less motivated to be invested in the storyline and just kind of be like, okay, whatever, because it rushes through a lot of plot points very quickly, and there's a whole thing about, is Lempicka actually gay or not, or was she just in love with Raphael because Raphael was the muse, and because Raphael was the reason why she created art. And that's a very interesting thing that you could explore, that you can make the audience uncomfortable with. I cite Dear Evan Hansen as a perfect example of a show that has a very gray character, and it goes into the psychological aspects of that. And while some people don't like that Evan Hansen didn't get what was coming for him, you have to admit that that's a very much a character piece focused on Evan, that it's not messy. And I feel like Lempicka could have been like that, but for like a female-centric character, and it simply wasn't. And I feel like people in reviews said, like, oh, they didn't make Lempicka out to be the monster that she was. I don't think that's the case. I don't think they just explored enough the intricacies, the contradictions, and the messiness of being an artist, and the ethics of art, and using people and things for your art, in your pursuit of it, and how that can be somewhat justified, but also is not ethically right. And the kind of debate on those two things. I had a friend who's like into doing writing, and they are very committed to that, and so they end up like in my personal life, they ended up pulling away from like hanging out and all that stuff, and that created tension, and things are awesome, things are good now. But again, it was interesting because that first act got me to really understand the mindset of being an artist, and when you get inspired, not being able to put down the brush, and how that you can't really condemn someone for that, or be mad at someone for that, or see someone as a bad person for that. But at the same time, there's the whole debate about personal lives, and that she has a daughter and a husband and a relationship, and she's neglecting that, and what does that mean, and just really intricate stuff that really interested me in the first act that they didn't follow through, and that should have been the core thing. Because I think that would have been what really interested people. Either that or the Nazi storyline. If you're going to go the Nazi storyline, that has to be from the start, and it's not. Same thing with the whole, like, ethics and art thing. Very intriguing things that I loved, and, like, I felt like I understood you, Lempicka. I understand you. I understand why you're using people and why you're addicted to your art. But then it kind of faded away in Act 2. And I think if it hadn't, things would have been a lot better. And then the ending, I didn't like at all. The Baroness has a random song and then dies. And also, Marinetti's like, oh, I'm a Nazi now. And then the Baroness says, oh, I feel sick. I'm going to faint. And then they like, she has cancer. Just out of nowhere. Just literally comes out of nowhere. It was laughably bad. And then you had in the Blasted California Sun in the final, where Tamara goes with the Baroness's husband. And, she basically ends it with the whole ensemble, standing on the stage, singing out to the audience, and it ends on an uplifting note. And it just felt like, come on, Chafkin, you're better than that, you're more creative than that. It felt like a cop-out, it felt weak, and it kind of just wrapped up things in a very, like, quick way without it being like, well, what does she think about her husband and her daughter and Raphael, and exploring the intricacies of that. I feel like, almost we could have had a full musical of, like, 90 minutes where it's just Lempicka in a room going over her psychological, debates and thoughts on the events of Lempicka. This is such a complex, deep show that this should be 3 hours. It should be a long, long show. And it is hard to condense this into a musical because there's so much to dive into. But again, that's where I feel like the show had its biggest shortcomings. So overall, I thought this show was really, really good, with great performances, great music, but it is brought down by a very underdeveloped and messy book that is why the show downfalled, I think, so heavily. And I also think that it's also just by nature, by its DNA, a very divisive show, because the way that it was designed and the different elements I feel like people don't like, but some people are going to like. I definitely do think this can be revived, and if the book is made better, this can really become a classic and a show that people love, kind of like Merrily, and maybe this could be the next Merrily. Again, I thought it deserved to get a Best Musical nomination over Suffs, which I hated, or Hell's Kitchen, which I also don't like. It's definitely not as bad as people said it is, but it is a very flawed show. But it's a flawed show that I do deeply admire and love and respect what they went for. And it is definitely one of the more unique shows, and I wish there were more shows like this. And why it failed was, I think, because, one, it was a very crowded season. Two, I think the marketing wasn't great. I mean, when you have pictures like this as your poster, it's going to detract a lot of people. It is a very, mature show, so its audience is a lot more niche. And there was actually an interview in Vulture where the producer of Lempicka said, obviously, he was, saying, obviously, it was not a great idea to invest in this because it's a niche property that's not going to have any stars in it or IP, but you bet on the artistic integrity of the piece and it getting universal acclaim and winning Best Musical, and that just didn't happen. And I also think that a lot of people just don't like the show. A lot of people went and saw it, and they just didn't like it, and that's understandable. I definitely don't think... I think it's being judged maybe a little too harshly. It is more worthy of seeing than other musicals, and I do wish it was going to run longer, and it deserved to have a longer run. But I definitely don't think this is the end of Lempicka's run. And I'd give this a solid 7 out of 10. If Act 2 was like Act 1, this would be a 10 out of 10. I'd be like, this was robbed, this was snubbed. But you know what? I can understand why it didn't get a Best Musical nomination. I don't get the score thing, though. But again, I think a lot of people see Lempicka as a show that's admiring its ambition artistically, but that, people will say Water for Elephants is a better musical because it's better structured, even though Water for Elephants is not artistically as ambitious and as respectable, if that makes sense. So anyways, guys, that is my review for Lempicka. Please go and see it if you can. You have 3 more chances to go and see it. Highly recommend it. Go and support this. It's awesome. It's a great show, and it's worthy of your time. And it's one of the more affordable musicals on Broadway, although I think that, from what I've heard, all the performances this weekend are sold out, so you might not get in. But if you don't, it's okay, because the album's going to be great. So subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.